welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, precisionhydration.com. You can personalize your hydration strategy today at precisionhydration.com with electrolytes in different strengths to match how you sweat. You can try a free box worth $9.99 using the code OxygenAddict. And we're also brought to you by Tribe Natural Sports Nutrition. You can try a Tribe pack of 6 delicious 100% natural vegan energy and recovery products for only £2, including free delivery with the code OxygenAddict20. All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the show. Welcome officially to the new year. It was officially New Year last year, wasn't it? Last week when we released the episode, then it was the very first thing on New Year's Day. So I hope you're having a good start to New Year, and I hope you enjoyed that first episode we put out last week. I've got to say, I've had tons of emails and contacts on Facebook and Twitter about people who learned a whole bunch from listening to Dr. Anton Creek in last week's episode. I've been back and listened to it all the way through and tried to make some notes again because it's been one of the most eye-opening conversations I've had over the past few years. So there's a lot of changes I'm trying to make with both my sleep, with my diet. He's inspired me to, one of the big things I've actually done is my phone hasn't been coming into the bedroom with me. It's now been putting out charging on the landing rather than coming into the bedroom. And lo and behold, the act of not bringing the phone into the bedroom means it's not there, so I don't scroll through it before bed. And I don't know whether I've got enough evidence yet to know whether this is true or not, but having tracked my sleep on my sort of Garmin watch, I've been getting tons more deep sleep just through not having had the phone in the bedroom. Now, whether the two are directly connected or not, I don't know, but it's the first thing that everybody says is put your phone outside the bedroom and don't be on it for an hour before bedtime. And it always seemed like simple advice that I never took. But I'll tell you what, if you're struggling to feel refreshed in the mornings, it's made a noticeable difference to me over the past week. So yeah, maybe give it a try. All right, so heading into this week's interview, I've got a great one for you. I managed to get an interview with Tim O'Donnell, who, of course, finished in second place at Kona this year. He had a stonking race, and it's a great interview with him because a lot of people might not know. He had a really tough year last year. He had a bike crash back in the spring and broke some ribs. He really struggled to even qualify for Kona. And in his own words, he kind of scraped through after a not great race for him. I think he qualified at Ironman Boulder with a third place. And he was just feeling like he was getting himself back into good shape again. And he broke a bone in his foot 6 weeks out from Kona. So sometimes I think the details of the struggle get lost in the fact somebody ends up on the podium. This is a guy who spent tons of his time aqua jogging and on a 0G treadmill to even get himself on the start line. So yeah, we've got a great interview with him, and there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up there for you as well. Before we go into that interview, though, I'm going to give you a shout out for our not new sponsors, but back on the show to us, Tribe. If you've not tried Tribe nutrition products before, they're a really cool company. They were founded back in 2015. We had one of the founders on the show. We had Guy on back in the day, and I just love this company. They were founded because the three founders did a 1,000-mile run across Eastern Europe to help fight human trafficking, to raise money to fight it. And they were really frustrated at the time with the available synthetic sports nutrition that they could get their hands on. They wanted something more natural. And so when they got back, they ended up trying to get in the kitchen and develop those products themselves. They ended up developing what we now have as the Tribe range, the bars, the shakes, and the protein bars. And it's grown massively as a company. So I'd want you guys to go and check it out and try it if you haven't tried it already. They've just done this really cool thing called Tribe Run for Love 3. So back in November, 250 runners went out to the Azores and they each ran 253 kilometers over 6 days. So an absolutely bonkers achievement to get so many people out to do such a massive multi-day ultra run. One of the guys I coached, Tom Crossland, went out and did this, and I'm going to interview him and have him on the show, partly about that experience and partly about some other stuff he's got coming up as well. So it'd be super interesting to hear that. They managed to raise £160,000 to help survivors of modern slavery during that. So as well as making great product, they're also a really cool company that I think are worth supporting as well. So if you go over to wearetribe.co/Oxygen Addict offer, you can select the 6-pack and enter the code OxygenAddict20, and you get it for £2, including delivery. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. And I can wholeheartedly vouch for the products that they make. They are really, really delicious. So give it a try. All right, guys. So without further ado, we'll go over into this week's interview of the week with Tim O'Donnell. Welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. It's awesome to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. And we're down here in Australia, so I think a little better weather than you got up in the UK right now.
Yeah. Whereabouts in Australia are you at the moment?
So we're in Noosa, the famous Noosa Triathlon up on the Sunshine Coast, which is just north of Brisbane in Queensland.
Very nice. Let's kick off this interview by firstly congratulating you on your World Championships finish. It was amazing to watch that race. It was, as I've said to a lot of people who've been on the show, one of the most gripping and interesting races, both on the men's and women's side, in recent memory. And I mean, you must be absolutely made up with that performance, right?
Yeah, I'm I'm still pretty stoked. It was just one of those days where everything just really, that special day, and you search for those days, all year long, and every year in Kona. And, I've been racing there since 2011. By far the best performance I put together. So, it was a tough year for me leading into the race, but you can change it all around with one day.
Well, it really is a lesson to everybody, isn't it? On just how perfect a day it's possible to have after, I mean, it was an awful year in terms of like training for you, wasn't it, with the foot injury?
Oh, yeah.
So I remember
started off with the broken ribs in March.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Crash. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Missed Ironman Texas. I missed Ironman Brazil. Finally got to the start line. Not until June last year was my first race, Ironman Boulder, and it wasn't a great race, but it's just I think when you have those obstacles to overcome, it makes just getting to the start line in Hawaii even more special. And I think sometimes when you just race with that attitude of gratitude, and you're not boggled down by expectations and things like that, you just let yourself go and let yourself have your best race.
Do you almost feel as though the foot injury took the pressure off you in the lead up to the race and allowed you to just go out and it looked like you had one of those fearless races where, you were at the front driving that bike for, I don't know how far, certainly from the turnaround at Harvey all the way back until Jan kind of made his move. Yep. You seem to be the guy who's doing all of the work.
Yeah. And you know what? When you're confident in your training, I think you just, and you're in a position where you can just do your race. And I think that was an important part for me. I was sure I was on the front, but at the same time, I was just doing my thing. And sometimes that's easier, than when someone else comes around. I was looking back, looking for somebody to help, and to ended up being to my detriment, because when Jan went around, he kind of bumped it to the whole next level. So, sometimes when you're playing that cat and mouse games, sometimes it's better just to be the guy controlling things and to, be working at your, where you want to be working, and just, allows you to have that smoother race.
Well, I don't think many people realize quite how disrupted your year was. And I only got a little bit of an insight into this when we had Talbot Cox on the show. And Talbot, for those who don't know, Talbot does the video production of your Tim and Rinny show. So he spends quite a lot of time with you and had a real insight into just how tough of a year you'd had. And it was almost like, as he was talking, I was thinking, I had no idea that your preparation had been, everyone reads you'd been injured, but no idea that you'd been as disrupted as you had in the lead up to that race. So will you talk a little bit about exactly what your preparation was for Kona from March onwards?
Yeah, well, I had, when we were here in Noosa last year, I had just a bad bike crash. I hit some debris in the road going on downhill on a descent, about 40 miles an hour. And what's that? Like, I don't know, 60K? Does that sound about right?
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. And broke some ribs and just a lot of road rash. And we headed back. It was only a few days before we were flying back home to Boulder. And, I got home and I was in pretty good shape. And I was just so hell bent on trying to get to the start line again. I was a little, I just wanted to get the Kona box checked. I was 4th place in Kona in 2018, which was a great race, but only the podium gets an automatic, an automatic qualifying spot.
Right.
So I was facing, I was in a position where coming off of a 4th place finish, I still had to, earn a Kona spot at one particular race. And I did not want to have to do more than one Ironman before Kona in 2019. So, I felt a lot of pressure on me and I kept getting sick, really severe sinus infections and trying to get healthy, get moving back from the rib thing. And finally got to the start line in June and it was, bad race. Fortunately, I got the Kona slot and I kind of was able to reset everything. And July came around and I was actually training pretty well, but I hadn't had a lot of consistent training, pretty much until after Boulder. I hadn't had more than 10 days of straight training without something happening. So,
wow,
it was heartbreaking for me 7 weeks out of Kona when I was in really great shape leading into 70.3 Santa Cruz, which was my tune-up race for Kona. I hit the edge of the road and broke my 5th metatarsal. I just inverted my foot and broke my 5th met. Oh. And it's actually something I did a year and a half prior, and it hadn't healed properly. So I was, I went from, we had a hard run. I trained with Julie Dibbins, and we had a hard run that morning, and this happened the last step of my run. So no one really kind of knew what happened. And I knew something was wrong. I went, got a giant bag of ice, drove to the pool, and I have a pickup truck. And I sat in the bed of the pickup truck with my foot on ice and texted Julie to come out in the parking lot because something had happened. And she just kind of had that look on her face, like, oh, not again. So yeah, went got an X-ray. X-ray said it was fine. So I had a really positive attitude. 7 days later, still wasn't feeling better. So I got an MRI and the MRI showed that it was broken again. So, here I am 6 weeks out of Kona, pretty much, believing that there was no way I was going to get to the start line. This was an injury I had only a year and a half earlier, and I think I was in a boot for 8 weeks at that point. So, I was pretty upset at that. Yeah. When all that kind of came tumbling down on me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine. So 6 weeks out, did you realistically think you were even going to get to race at Kona at that point?
No, I didn't. Actually, when I came back from the MRI, I had it done at night, and the MRI techs aren't supposed to say anything, but he was just like, oh yeah, that's clearly broken.
Oh no.
And so I went home and just had a big bottle, opened a nice bottle of wine, and sat on the couch. And Rennie was out. I don't know where she was, but she was out somewhere. And just kind of let her know what was happening, and sent her a picture of the bottle of wine. I was sitting by myself on the couch.
Oh man! So you have a bottle of wine and a bit of a pity party, and then the next day, yep. Obviously something happens here, because to be able to get yourself to Kona in 6 weeks' time, talk to us about the intervening 6 weeks then between that and actually getting to Kona.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I said to myself, all right, you can sulk for one night. You can have this bottle of wine, and then tomorrow morning, you got to get back on the horse. It's like when you have a bad race. A good friend of mine, Greg Bennett, Olympian and former world number one back in the day, he always told me, you get 24 hours to sulk if you have a bad race, and then you figure it out and you get back going. So I kind of took that approach with my foot, and the next morning, obviously chatted with Julie and just got back to doing what we could. And I think that's the really important thing, is you don't focus on what you can't do. Focus on what you can do in that moment to become a better athlete. And maybe that means, you think more about your race strategy or your nutrition strategy. Maybe you focus on your swim technique because all you can do is swim. You have to figure out, how do you make the best of the situation? Because, we all get dealt our hand, and you have to play that hand. So it'd be silly to sit around and wish you had a different hand, different cards in your hand, right? You have what you have, and you got to play it.
Yeah. And now Talbot has already let slip a little bit, so our regular listeners will kind of know the story here. You became Mr. Aqua Jogger, as well as hitting the pool and hitting the bike hard.
Yep.
How many, I don't know how you measure this even, how many minutes, hours did you spend aqua running over those coming weeks?
Well, I'd actually already claimed the title, I think, of Mr. Aqua Jogger the year before when I was in Noosa running with my broken foot. But I got back in. I wouldn't run. Maybe I would do 90 minutes max, but you do a 5-6K swim and then right into a 90-minute aqua jog. So you're at the pool for 3 or 3.5 hours, which gets a little kind of mind numbing.
Yeah.
But it was probably the first. I said 2 weeks. That next 2 weeks, I was only aqua jogging. And I actually kind of like aqua jogging, to be honest. I think I had kept doing it over the last year and a half from the first injury. And I think it's a great way to kind of loosen up the body and get a nice, range of motion and work on your hip movement without tiring your body. So I didn't mind it for a short period of time, but if I had to keep doing it, I might have, every session you're hoping that you'll be able to, get out on the road and run.
What does it actually involve?
Still a few weeks off from that.
Are you wearing like a life vest and just jogging on the spot, or do you actually move? How does it work?
Yeah, I do a mix of shallow water aqua jogging. I wasn't able to do this with my foot, but when I'm healthy, I'll actually push off the bottom a little bit. But when you're injured, you usually do deep water running. And I started with a flotation belt and worked my way up from just no belt, just basically. I actually wear running shoes as well when I aqua jog. Helps the feel and a little more resistance. So shoes, no belt. I work with a company called Aftershocks that has a waterproof headphones. So I'll throw those on and I'll get running.
And you just run on the spot. Is that essentially what happens? Mm-hmm. You just wow.
Yeah. You run. You kind of do like laps in the deep end of the pool, or some sessions I'll just tie a stretch cord to the starting block. Just run in place like you're running on a treadmill.
I don't know whether I'm the only person listening to this thinking if I put running shoes on and try to jog on the spot without any kind of flotation on, the lifeguard would be coming after me pretty quickly.
Right.
Did you actually go on?
Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's hard to imagine how you even create enough, I don't know what the word is, flotation to keep your head above the water.
Yeah, kind of almost propulsion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I say that the shoes on, no belt is like the black belt of aqua jogging. You gotta work your way up to that. You start with your belt and no shoes, and then you put shoes on, and then you take the belt off, and then you graduate.
Right. Love it. So a couple of weeks of that then. How far before Kona did you manage to get to run again outdoors?
So I started, we do our pre-Kona training camp in Lawrence, Kansas, which is about an 8-hour drive from Boulder, but it's at sea level. There's nice rolling hills. It's a quiet town, 50-meter pool, really nice people, and it's usually hot and humid. So that's where we found the last 2 years has been an awesome spot to do our Kona prep. But it wasn't until we got to Lawrence that I was able to get in. I think that was, I want to say, like 3.5 weeks out of Kona. And that's when I started running on a zero gravity treadmill. And I honestly think that was a huge part of my success in Kona. Just because I was able to gradually build my weight. I was running at 75% body weight, and just, gradually build your weight up a little bit. But you're getting all that neuromuscular training, and you're getting that repetition and that feeling of running at race pace. But you're not doing all that, pounding to your body and creating muscle tears and, those big long runs that you need to recover from. I just wasn't able to do, but I was still getting some of the benefit. So, I think that was a huge part of the success of my race.
This is the big balancing act of Ironman training and racing, isn't it? That the training
Absolutely.
that you need to do to be able to complete the race is so physically hard on your body that athletes are always trying to sort of do enough to get fitter, but not so much that you can actually recover for the next session. It sounds like that you hit upon something with a 0G treadmill that allows you to almost do more at a less damaging cost, as it were. Will you use that again in the future, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think I will. I mean, I don't think it's something that you can just do all year, because at some point you have to get the miles in, right? But I've been racing for a long time. I've been doing Ironman for 8 or 9 years. So you have a lot of base, and you have more than I think you understand you have when it comes to money in the bank. And you can draw some checks. You don't always have to make the deposits. And I think it's a balance that a lot of athletes need to learn, because we all want to be the best, and we all know at some point we had to work really hard to get where you're at. So you want to just double down on that and think, okay, well, I guess I just need to keep working that hard to keep improving. But at some point you have to realize that more isn't always better, especially as you get older.
Yeah, that's very wise words, I think. Okay, so let's go to race day in Kona. And just before we talk about that, something that Talbot mentioned when I interviewed him was, it was interesting to me that you put out on your YouTube channel that you'd been injured when you did ahead of the race. And I actually thought that could be a very clever, almost in your competitors' eyes. I wondered how many of them looked at you and thought, right, well, I've seen this video. Tim's been completely injured for 6 weeks. He's got a broken foot. We can almost, like, you were under the radar because people almost disregarded you a bit because of the run injury. Do you think that might have played out on race day, or was that even part of your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I actually, I actually didn't want to come out and say that I broke my foot. If I had a bad race, I didn't want to, be putting excuses out before the race to kind of justify a bad race.
Okay.
If I'm gonna start the race, I want to, I think I have a chance of doing well. But at the same time, I did have to, people were, I missed a lot of races. I missed Santa Cruz. So, I kind of said, I had to tell people that, I had a little hiccup, but, all's good. But I know a good buddy, I already mentioned Greg Bennett. He was interviewing some of the other guys like Jan and Sevi for the NBC broadcast. And he basically told them I wasn't even going to pack my running shoes in T2 because there's no way I could run. So I think they're all like, what the heck? I thought you weren't running.
Right. Interesting. You got Greg in your corner. Yep. Psychological warfare.
Sneaky Greg.
All right, then. So let's go to race day then. The gun goes off. I think there's a group of sort of 8 or 9 of you had a blistering swim, got away from everybody else, and you were happily swimming with those guys there. Were you aware that a split had happened at that point?
I did, yeah. I kind of had a good sense of the size of the group, and that's always every year. That's my dream scenario, and I have a swimming background. I'm a strong swimmer, but I also make sure to work on my swim going into Kona because I know how important it is if you can make that break to be in it.
Yeah.
And I actually I'm usually a pretty slow starter off the gun, and I have to kind of work my way up the group. But I had a great start and found myself in that group right away. So at that point I was happy and just like kind of, said to myself, okay, you're where you need to be, just stay focused and and don't screw it up till we get out of the water.
And then so you're out. Let's see who's in the group. There was you, Josh Amberger, Jan was obviously there, Ali Brownlee, and a whole bunch of others were with you as well, weren't they? And then
Braden Curry.
Braden was there, who obviously you'd had that amazing battle with the year before, hadn't you, for the the fourth
Yeah,
place
and
finish.
we were swimming next to each other on the way out of the swim, and I thought, oh man, I'm like, we had to run together, all last year. Now we're going to be, looks like, doing the entire race side by side.
I love it. And then you're out onto the bike. It looked like on the footage, Ali Brownlee really put an effort in early going up Polani. Did you guys even feel or register that? Because it looked like he just went and zoomed away almost like it was an ITU race.
Yeah, I saw that happen, and I've seen it happen before, and I just think it's early to go by yourself. To try to go by yourself going to Polani, that's an aggressive move. And having done the race so many times, I was happy to just let that be what it was. And I think Jan got to the front, and I think Jan just kind of wanted to let him know, hey, it's not that easy here, and Jan brought him back fairly quickly.
Okay. And then it seemed to be sort of certainly from the turnaround coming back from Harvey, it was you and Jan. Ali punctured, didn't he, and dropped off for a bit and then bridged back up to you both.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it looked to me as though there were several times on the bike when you kind of looked around over your shoulder, and I didn't know whether that was to say, are either of you two going to come through and do something here, or whether it was just you checking back as to what was going on behind you?
Yeah, no, we're going out. We all kind of did some jockeying coming up Kauai High back onto the Queen K after the descent from Javi. And, that's where I ended up back on the front. I didn't realize Ali had punctured and had made that big effort to get back up. So he kind of came by with some choice words, and I giggled a little bit and said, rode back up and like, oh, man, that stinks. Sorry to hear. And then got on the front and just started riding. But yeah, it was later on when I was kind of looking for someone else to come around, just because I'd felt like, I'd been on the front a while, and, maybe somebody else should get up and break the wind a little bit.
Yeah. It certainly looked like you were extremely comfortable riding along at that point. And it's hard for the viewers to get a sense of what's going on the road, because obviously in retrospect we understand why, but I was looking at this and going, well, why hasn't Camworth and Sebi and Lionel and that group, why haven't they bridged back up? And obviously in retrospect it was that they couldn't. We've interviewed Cam, and he said, it wasn't that we weren't trying, mate, but these guys just weren't coming back to us. So you were obviously on an absolutely blinding day on the bike, in that those guys were doing their usual and couldn't bridge back up to you. Do you feel as though the time that you had when you were injured for your run, did that allow you to work on your bike more? Do you feel you were more bike fit this year?
Oh, absolutely. I think, going back to our conversation about, running with the zero gravity, when I was doing that allowed me to really not only ride more, but it allowed me to increase my intensity as well, just because I didn't have that fatigue in my legs from all the running.
Okay.
And that was huge because, I've ridden well in years past, but I pay a much steeper price when it comes down to the run. And this year I really felt I had a great ride, and I felt like it was, it wasn't completely within myself. There's always points where you're kind of pushing it a little harder than maybe you should, but overall I felt like it was a very smart ride, and I wouldn't have been able to ride like that if we hadn't done that kind of extra cycling training we did in that last block. And I work with Matt Bottrell, who's a fantastic cycling coach, and he came out to Lawrence with us, and it was just really great having some hands-on time with him. And, when doing all that extra quality, having him there to help guide me was really cool.
Fantastic. Well, one of the things I was going to comment on was you now have that classic, we talk about it over here, like the classic Matt Bottrell coached position, with elbows really tucked close together, hands quite high, face hidden down behind your hands, like punching through the wind. And it certainly looked as though you were really comfortable, riding really efficient in that position. Is that a big thing that Matt has brought to your cycling since you've been working with him?
Yeah, absolutely. That's something we had only changed really the beginning of last year. Matt came out to Boulder and must have been or late January, and we kind of dialed that in. It took a long time. I'd say several months for me to really start to get comfortable. And, it's not just about how aero you can get, it's how aero you can ride for 180K. And I think that's a lot of the focus that Matt puts into our training, is being able to ride like that for the entire ride, because that's where the savings really come into play. It's not your theoretical savings. It's what can you save on the day with your aerodynamics?
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting, isn't it? The way that I'll always remember I put Matt in the pool when I was working with him and was giving him some swim drills, and he related everything I was telling him back to the bike, and he would say, right, okay, so you're asking me to do this. This is like on the bike when I tuck my shoulders in and I'm trying to feel where the wind's going. I'm trying to make myself more narrow. And it was the first time like a light bulb went off in me, and that the way that we coach swimming, it's exactly the same for biking. It's the idea that you're moving through a fluid medium, being the air, and you've got to get your body into the right position. Matt sort of seemed to intuitively understand that with cycling, didn't he? And some of those, I think he approaches cycling coaching in the way that a lot of swim coaches approach swim coaching, and that drills are there for a reason. They're there so that, I've put you in this amazing position, which you can hold for 2.5 minutes when you first go out. You have to practice before you can ride in that position for... and it takes months, doesn't it, to be able to be good in that position?
It does. Yeah, it takes a long time. You have to adapt your body to be able to hold that position, and it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Are you riding with his arm cups, the ones that are wide at the side that you can push your elbows out into? Yeah. And that takes a while to adjust to, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm much narrower than I used to be, which it's been interesting adaptation as well, but it all pays off.
So in terms of, let's ask you this, in terms of bike fitness and numbers and things, as well as being much more aerodynamic, were you seeing better numbers as you went into Kona as well?
Training, absolutely. We did some 4-minute efforts in that last block in Lawrence, and I want to say they were like 15 or 20 watts higher than what I did kind of a similar workout in Lawrence in 2018. So the numbers are definitely there. But, with that being said, my power in Kona wasn't really far off of what I've done in the past. It's just I was much more efficient, and it didn't, the toll on me, the energy expense to ride those numbers was less, which is really the important part.
Yeah, got you. Okay. And when Matt comes
we don't want to ride. We don't need more power, right? We just want to ride faster. And I think we all get caught up with our data and wanting, you get the machismo coming out that you need the highest power numbers out there. You just want to ride fast. I'd rather do it with less watts. If I can do it with less watts, then that's my goal.
Well, I always remember Matt saying to me, look, mate, power's nothing without control. And if you can't control what you're doing, it doesn't matter how much power you've got, because, and I was like, oh, okay. And I think especially for the sort of the slightly aging age group, as people getting into the 40s and early 50s, there's a certain inevitability that you're only going to get to a certain level of power. You're not constantly going to be able to get fitter. You have to get smarter, and the aerodynamics is a big part of that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's a big part of kind of my almost renaissance these last 2 races in Kona as I've gotten older, is that I've just gotten smarter. I've realized that, hey, I'm not going to fit a round peg into a square hole right now, but just get 10 times fitter and be a better athlete. I need to be smart about how I become a better athlete.
Are you 39 right now? Is that right?
I am. Yep.
And you've had, I've got this right, you've had 6 top 10 finishes at Kona in the last 8 years, which is a pretty solid record.
Thanks.
How do you feel about your body at 39 in terms of how long? I'm thinking back, I'm nearly 10 years older than you, and at 39 I was in a kind of, I don't really feel much difference I did when I was 29 or 33. The difference at 47 is, quite marked. How many more years do you think you can see yourself going forward? Because it seems like you're still improving. You're getting, certainly in terms of speed over the ground, you're still improving, aren't you?
Yeah, don't really want to put an arbitrary number on it.
Yeah.
I think the important thing is keeping my body healthy and moving properly, and then being smart about the load that I put into my body to prepare for races. And I think if I do that, properly, I can race for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
And race at a high level.
Let me ask you this then. You've got a 2-year-old daughter, Izzy, who people will be familiar with from your YouTube channel. And anybody who has tried to do any kind of athletics and stay healthy around having a toddler in the house, we'll be thinking, how on earth has he done that? And you mentioned earlier, you got sick in the year, you had sinusitis, and it was hard to get rid of. Let's see what we can learn from you in terms of, are there any things that you do that you found particularly effective at either staying healthy or quickly getting healthy again if you get sick?
Yep. Yeah. You know what? We're very fortunate. We have a live-in nanny to help us out. And I think keeping Izzy out of daycare has probably been the number one thing to keep us healthy, because, kids carry germs, and when kids are around a whole bunch of other kids, it's inevitable. So, we just make sure, when Izzy comes back from, public places, she goes to the library a lot for, story time and things like that she's always making sure she washes her hands before she comes in. Gwen Jurgensen gave us a good tip to, make sure you don't share water bottles. I think her son Stanley kept getting her sick because, she was grabbing her water bottle. So you just have to be smart with little things like that. And, I really, Rennie's very much has a naturopath mindset. So she's gotten me into a lot of essential oils and things like that to help keep us healthy. And that, I think that's been a good part of, kind of either shortening illnesses or staving them off. Okay.
I don't know anything at all about essential oils. Give us an example of something that you would use and what it's been good for.
Yeah. Oregano is particularly good for sickness. We combine that with lemon just to help the kind of that. It's a strong oil. Manuka oil is great. There's some proprietary blends. doTERRA makes a product called On Guard, which is kind of blended for immune defense.
Okay.
So, we kind of stick with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, look into that. That's very interesting. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing I want to ask you about then, the PTO and the Collins Cup and your involvement in that. Tell us what's going on, Tim.
Collins Cup. We're going to have an announcement about that pretty soon. I can't say too much, but I'm really excited to be part of the PTO. We're going to have some big announcements coming out very soon about the organization this year. And it's really a chance for the athletes to get involved with the future of the sport. And, we all want to see triathlon grow and become, a viewer sport, and to reach a broader audience and to promote our health and wellness, the lives that we all love to live, to promote that to a larger audience. And I think we're going to be able to do that pretty soon with some pretty cool events.
Are these new events that are going to be coming out? Oh, it's hard with the teasers, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. Well, we've talked about the Collins Cup. That's if anybody's familiar with golf, the Ryder Cup is America versus Europe, correct?
Yeah.
So we're going to have America versus Europe versus the rest of the world in head-to-head matches. So there'll be 6 men and 6 women from each region. So say it's going to be myself versus Jan from Europe versus Lionel from the international team. 3 of us will go off head-to-head racing, and there'll be 6 individual head-to-head races and scored kind of like team cross-country style.
Okay.
So that's the vision of the Collins Cup. We've been talking about it for a few years, and hopefully we'll have an announcement about that in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, interesting. Okay, watch this space, listeners.
Yeah.
Well, you just mentioned Jan then, which brings us around nicely to sort of talk about the end of the race in Kona and the run and sort of the way that played out for you, because you've mentioned already, you hoped you were going to have a good run going into it. You feel like your legs were maybe fresher because of the 0G treadmill work, but it looked like you held together really well over the sort of middle third of that race when people around you were faltering.
Yeah, I did. I hit the run in T2, and immediately when my feet hit the ground, I felt like, I think I can run well. And I was coming out of transition. I think I was 2 or 2.5 minutes down on Jan, and I saw the clock and it said 5:09 something. And I did some quick math. I'm like, oh wow, I could possibly break 8 hours, but I'll have to run under 250, which I had never done before in Kona.
Yeah,
and I think in hindsight, I look back now and I think I'm in a good place because I thought, all right, well, that's great. Forget about it. Get to work. You're not gonna get there by thinking about getting there. You're gonna get there by executing. And in years past, I remember the first chance I had to break 8 hours in Arizona. I saw the clock and that's all I started thinking about on the run. And then I had a horrible run and it all fell apart. So the fact that I was able to refocus very quickly and just think about, all right, what's the process? How am I going to get from A to B as quickly as I can? I think that's really important. Just, kind of statement of where I was and how I was ready to race. And, I was running strong. I was just trying to be smart. I wasn't sure about how my fitness was going to be towards the end of that run, coming off of the low running volume. But, I didn't get too worried about it. I just said, all right, get into a comfortable rhythm that feels good. And hopefully Jan messes something up.
And were you, all right, this is the big one for me, coming out with that sort of, 8 hours is possibly on the horizon. How much did that drive you on towards the last couple of miles, knowing that you were...
honestly, I didn't think about it. From the moment that I saw that clock in T2, I did not think about it until like 1,200 meters from the finish line.
Really?
Because I was just so focused on doing what I needed to do to have a solid run, and to hold off the guys behind me. And I wasn't really focused about Jan. And I think, when Jan made that big move around 92 miles or so at the top of Scenic Point, I just knew that wasn't my move. It wasn't the smart thing for me to do.
Okay.
And the same thing on the run. I got on the run. I'm like, okay, well, I can try to kill myself right now to pull in Jan, who's 2.5 minutes up the road, which may absolutely blow me up and ruin my race. But I'm in a great spot considering the year I've had. So let's run a smart race. And if Jan falters, you're going to be there to pick up the pieces. And, that's when you make a move. Obviously he didn't falter, but, I was able to kind of hold that strong spot. And, when I was 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters from the finish line, I heard someone yell, the race clock is 7:50, whatever. I'm like, oh man, I can still do it. I think I can still do it. So, I just kind of try to stay on task, and then running down the finish chute, I saw the clock and I saw that I was going to make it. And I just, big smile came on my face.
So 7:59:40 was the overall time after running a 2:49 marathon. That's remarkable consistency. 6 top 10s in Kona. You've been the fastest American, I don't know how many times, at least 3 or 4, right? Or is it more than that?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Yeah, that's probably about right.
So what does the future hold? What's next then? What keeps driving you on every year?
Well, first we forgot to mention the best part about that race. I finally got the house record for the run, the house run course record in Kona. I finally outran Rennie.
Oh, brilliant. I hadn't even thought about that. You must be in the unique place as the only guy on the planet who can finish second overall and be worrying about outrunning his wife.
Right.
She's a remarkable athlete as well, isn't she?
Yeah, she's had an amazing career, and she's ticking away right now, and she's still got great things to do. In her career, she's definitely not done by any means.
How does it work with the two of you in a relationship together in terms of balancing your training and do you provide motivation for each other, do you think, to keep on going?
I think we just keep each other accountable, especially as, we get further into the sport. Sometimes it's easier to kind of skip some of the little details that you should be doing. So I think we keep each other accountable, and, we just keep each other in love with the sport too. I think, we both have so much fun doing what we're doing, and particularly in 2018 when we got to do all the, the entire year racing together with Izzy. It was just such a great experience to be doing it as a family that it's, I think it's given our careers a whole new life, to be honest.
Oh, that's awesome. Your love for doing the sport, and you sound like you're a really balanced family, and it sounds like everything works really well, and you've included your daughter into what you do so almost organically. It's hard to see a time when you won't want to do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think whenever we stop racing, I don't think it'll be for our want to do something else. We just want to make sure we're still very, very relevant when we're racing. So that'll probably be the factor.
All right. Well, listen, finally, before we wrap this up, tell us about where people can find out more about you and Rinny and your training and racing.
Yeah, well, we have, as you said, you talked to Talbot. We work with Talbot on our YouTube channel, the Tim and Rinny Show. So you can go into the YouTube and look us up and subscribe to the channel. We got some great stuff, not just on racing and training, which there's a ton of, but also the family dynamics and that kind of whole side of our lives, which is a lot of fun. And Instagram, TO and Try. Always updating, my to-do up there and what we're up to on Instagram.
All right, great stuff, man. Well, listen, thank you very much for taking the time to come on and talk to us. I'm really looking forward to seeing where the racing takes you this year. What are your race plans coming up?
Well, I have a couple of races in Europe planned. Can't announce them yet, but I will be in Europe, I think, twice. And other than that, in Kona, I've already validated for Kona. So that's kind of my whole race season with a few 70.3s sprinkled in there somewhere.
Love it. Still can't tell us what the teasers are for the races in Europe, but we'll be finding out soon.
Yep, soon to come.
Love it. All right then, Tim O'Donnell, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great year, and hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, man.
Right, cheers.
There we go. Hope you enjoyed the interview there. And I got to say, I found Tim's attitude really inspiring. That quote about don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do today to be a better athlete, I think is a brilliant quote I'm going to take with me and try and just apply it to everyday life to try and do one thing a little bit better. And rather than concentrating, as I tend to at the moment, on the 100 things I'm not doing very well. So thanks very much, Tim, for joining us on the show. And thanks to our old friend Matt Bottrell for setting the interview up. It's great to get Tim on there, and great to be able to get access to big names like Tim who finished on the Kona podium. That's awesome. All right, shout out to our sponsors, Precision Hydration. You are going to need to take care of your electrolytes for training on the turbo or the treadmill, if you're training in the depths of the British winter to stop yourself getting cramps, or if you're lucky enough to get yourself out into the heat of a foreign training camp sometime soon. You can take care of your electrolyte needs just by visiting precisionhydration.com. You can take their online sweat test and see if you're a particularly heavy or particularly salty sweater. For me, I'm a really, really salty sweater, and I suffer really badly with cramps if I'm training indoors on the turbo and don't take it. So I get the 1500 milligram sachets, and it really works well for me. But you can take their simple online questionnaire and it'll give you the right product for you. So really easy bit of science, and it can solve your cramping problems. Remember, if you haven't tried it before, you can try a free box worth $9.99 using the code OxygenAddict. All right, Coach's Couch this week. There's an awful lot of my athletes have been struggling with illness, and a lot of my family and friends outside of the training community have been struggling with illness. It seems like there's been a huge amount of bugs and like gastric flu and chest infections and all manner of hideous things going around. So if you've been affected, I really feel for you. I feel like I've managed to avoid the worst of it personally, but like I said, a lot of the athletes that I coach have really struggled with it over the Christmas period. And I don't know why it always seems to happen during that Christmas holiday. It might be that we we try to get ourselves to the Christmas holidays and we're trying to squeeze every ounce out of work, and we're going to extra parties, and the stress of doing extra stuff pushes us over the edge. But I thought what I'd do in Coach's Couch this week is, rather than talk about training, we'll talk about recovery from the illness if you've suffered from it, and see if we can kind of ease people's minds a little bit, because I think one of the common denominators of the guys and girls who listen to this show is that we're really driven to do the training, and we're willing to do unreasonable things to get up early in the morning or stay up late at night to get the training done. And that can serve us really well. But at the times when we're struggling with illness, it can arguably not serve us as well. And so here are my tips for sort of coming back from illness once you've had it and you're trying to get back from it. My first and my biggest tip for everybody is always, if you've had any kind of illness, even if it's just been a cold, I advise people to take 2 extra days of rest beyond the day when they think that they're well and ready to train again, because we almost always overestimate and try and come back too quickly. So 2 clear days after that day where you go, right, I'm definitely well again, I could definitely train today, take 2 more days of not training after that. That'll absolutely make sure that you are willing and ready to go. And it's similar to how when you're taking a course of antibiotics, you start to feel well and you get yourself well again, and then you've got more antibiotics to take still, and it's tempting to think, well, I won't finish the course of antibiotics because I'm well again. They're still doing the job. My belief is that taking extra rest, that is still doing the job after you feel as though you recovered. And so it just makes sure, like an insurance policy, that you are actually going to get completely well before you get ready to go. All right, so let's talk about that first week back. That first week back, the first thing I'll say is I want you to stay out of the pool completely. So let's try and avoid any of those germs that you might still be susceptible to. I think the pool is where you've got the most risk of picking something up. So let's do that first. The runs, keep them nice and short. Get them right down at the slow end of e-pace, include plenty of walk breaks, and just take it really, really easy on the run for that week. Similarly on the bike, first workout back, make it a nice steady ride. You don't need to do much more than zone 2 or just riding at sort of 65-70% of FTP. Just see how you feel for that first session and think of it almost as neuromuscular training rather than cardiovascular training. Second workout back on the bike, you can start doing some of the harder stuff again if you're confident after that first workout. And what I used to say to my athletes is just nominally reduce your FTP by 10%. So everything becomes 10% easier. Don't be tempted to really test the top end to see how much fitness you've lost, although we're all tempted to do that. Just nominally knock it down by 10%. And then at the end of that first week back, you should be good to go to roll back into your usual training. Your FTP can go back to its usual level. Your e-pace running can go back to its usual e-pace, and everything should be fine. You can roll back into your swimming. The one caveat I would say with that swim, we talked about not swimming at all during that first week back. If you've done sort of 3 or 4 or 5 days of biking and running and you're absolutely convinced you're back to normal, you can get a swim in at the weekend at the end of that first week back. And all things being well, you should then be back firing on all cylinders again and good to go roll back into your training. And I can't stress this enough, what I really like is this idea that you err on the side of caution when you're coming back from an illness so that you don't accidentally force it into becoming a worse illness or making the illness, even more deep than it possibly could have been. Okay. Now then, the last few weeks I've been saying to you, we had a special offer coming up with Team Oxygen Addict if you've been looking to get some triathlon coaching and to kick off your 2020 in the right way by getting coached and trained to do your event so you have the best year you can possibly have this year. I've been saying we've got a big special offer coming up, and here it is. What we've decided to do is offer you a 30-day trial, 30 days of coaching for just £1. So there's no long-term commitment to this. We're not getting you to sign up so it auto rolls into a membership at the end of this. We genuinely want to make this as risk-free as possible for people. You pay £1 one time for 30-month membership. We're going to bring you in and we're going to give you the same training plan that our athletes would have at this time of year. You're going to see all about the FTP training on the bike. You're going to see all about the e-pace running that I'm always talking about and how the FTP training on the bike has a halo effect and improves your running, even though your running is just steady and comfortable and enjoyable. You're going to see the swim drills that we do with our athletes and the focused way we do swim training. You get 30 days of that training, so over 4 weeks worth. And at the end of that, you can then make an informed decision and think, great, either this has worked brilliantly for me and this methodology works really well, and I hope that's going to be the case. And if so, you can then talk to us about joining and becoming a full member. And if it's not for you, then you've given it a try and you can head out and try one of the other different methods that are out there. But I really wanted to make this this is a no-brainer. If someone's looking to really take their performance to a next level this year, let's get you in with us and with our team and our community, and let's give you the best possible start we can to 2020. So dead simply, all you've got to do is click the link in the show notes. That's going to take you to a special landing page, and it's going to let you enter your details, and we can get you started straight away, pretty much have your training up and running that day. So as a coached Team Oxygen Addict member, you're going to get access to hundreds of different proven training plans for whatever event you're going to do. I'll apply the right plan for you, for your background, for your history and the events that you're doing, and it'll be tailored for the events that you're doing. So if you've got B races and C races along the way, you'll be tapering and recovering from those. You've got strength and conditioning coaching in there. You've got unlimited coach support from me and our Facebook group. We've got the private Facebook community to ask any questions you've got and to talk with our other members. We've got our online group coaching calls on video, so you get a chance to talk face-to-face with me and Andy and ask all the questions that you've got. We've got exclusive members-only content. We've got partner discounts as well. So I really think we've got the best all-in-one solution for triathlon coaching, and I just want as many of our listeners to come in and give it a try as possible. So before we finish today, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of our members who've had some great results. First up, Dave Naylor. Well done, mate. FTP jumped from 267 to 291 in 6 weeks. Top work. Dave Leaper, your 10K time trial. He's improved to 44:08, which is a lifetime PB. That's 3 minutes faster since he last tested in November. Baz Harper, your 400 meter time in the pool reduced from 6:39 in the mid-November to 6:16 just recently. So excellent work on the swimming. And Laura Ongaro, her 10K time has come down by 5 minutes from the last one she did. Real world results from real world training that fits in around your life. Come in and give it a go. Just click the link in the show notes and that'll get you there, and we'll get you in and get you started. All right, everybody, thanks very much for listening. Quick shout out to our sponsors to finish. Remember, Precision Hydration, use the code Oxygen Addict to get a free box worth $9.99. At Tribe, enter the code OxygenAddict20 at checkout over at wearetribe.co. You'll get 6 bars or shakes or whatever product you want in your box for £2. Over at thriver.co, you can use the code OxygenAddict50 for 50% off your first blood test. Those are the ones we talked about in last week's show. And at Team Oxygen Addict, you can get 30 days of coaching for £1. Just click the link in the show notes. All right, everybody. Remember, there's links in the show notes for all these sponsors, so you don't have to remember them. And until next week, I hope you've enjoyed listening to our interview with Tim O'Donnell. Have a great, safe training and racing week. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. See ya.